Sorry for the pun, but watching this really did feel like a dream. Hello everyone, welcome to the Weeb initiative. I'm your host, the Weeb. This is a show where every other week I'll be talking about anime, manga, and everything in between. This week I'll be talking about, as this is a special episode, this is the 100th episode in this podcast, I'll be talking about one movie that I was kind of holding out and watching for a bit because I heard that it is at the same time really cute and beautiful and at the same time pretty depressing. So I held out because I really thought that I would cry my heart out, though results may vary depending on who you ask. Anyway, so today we're talking about Kimi no Na wa, or Your Name in English. And before I even start, some disclaimers. Spoiler alert, I'll be talking about some of the spoilers. I don't want to actually spoil the whole idea of the movie. I think that I will cut this one a bit short, even though it's the 100th episode. But the thing is, there is a big split in the movie after the end of the second act, and as that is the pivotal point of the movie itself, I think that it would be really doing really dirty to the people that did not watch this yet, even though the movie has been out for nearly a decade at this point. But I really think that those who watch this movie should watch it blind, as I did, and as such I will try to keep the spoilers a bit short this time. That being said, there is another thing that I want to talk about. Is this is really quickly. I really don't like to actually do this in the middle of an episode. I really thought about doing a social media post about it, but even then things are, I thought that I would reach most people here. So long story short, okay, so I have a plan to go to Japan next year on August to visit mostly Tokyo, but some other places, and especially I want to go as a visitor into a Comic Cat for 2026. I think it's C108, and as such I set up a Buy Me a Coffee page. So if you go to the description, there is a link where you can support me, just $1. It's alright. The minimum, how much low you can get it, I at this point do not offer any extras to the people that support me. I just have my gratitude to you if you can, and because at this point really I have little time, if not to actually get these episodes out, so at this point I can't really offer anything else. Though if you can help, if you have the money, if it's not going to make a difference in your life, if you want to support the things that I do, please do. I want to go to Japan and record some stuff, do some actual content, some anime content stuff and such. That's the main announcement. I will also be opening subscriptions inside of my main hosting site, that is Red Circle. So in the next few weeks you may see the subscription option there. That being said, if you want to support me, please do. If you don't want to, no problem. I'll keep doing this free of charge. There's nothing really there to me. It's just something that I want to get some extra money, just to get some extra things for the trip, but again, not needed. So with that said, let's get to the stats of the movie. So originally, right? So Kimi no Na wa, or Your Name, is originally a Japanese anime movie written and directed by Shinkai Makoto and produced by the studio Comics Wave Films. Basically, these two names are intermingled because for the most part, as I understand the story of the studio, Shinkai-san is the one and basically only director that is inside of Comics Wave, and they for the most part have only done basically works he wrote and or directed. So there's that. Kimi no Na wa later on went into having a manga and I think a light novel, if I'm not mistaken, though, and I think a manga spin-off also, though I think the manga spin-off may or may not be canon, and the manga and light novel already covers the whole idea of the movie, so there's that. With that said, the movie is 1 hour and 46 minutes. It is, oh my god, really well done. Officially released in Japan on 26th of August 2016. Although I think that there was a pre-screening of it on July 3rd, 2016 on Anime Expo. It was, for the longest time, the highest grossing movie, Japanese film of all time, with worldwide audience, being only surpassed in 2020 by Kimetsu no Yaiba, I think Mugen Train movie. I think that's the name of the movie, right? And it is, it speaks for itself, I think. For those who have not watched it, and this is a thing that I want to be really upfront about. I think that before you even listen to what I have to say, you probably should go and watch it before anything else, because I think that for the most part, this is a more experiential kind of anime, a kind of movie, kind of, if it was a series, I would say series here, but I think it is much more of an experiential thing rather than an actual story that's well told, or something that is especially well animated. Not to say that it is not, but let's just say that nothing that you see in Kimi no Na is especially new or novel, for that matter, but I think that it is the combination of everything that it shows that really brings it together. So, for instance, Kimi no Na starts with a really, how can I say that? It's a really weird presentation of our two main characters. The first one actually is Mitsuha, who is a girl on high school age, living on the central part of Japan, on a town, really small town, named Itomori, and it's really rural. She is part of a distinguished family, being the daughter of Miku priestess, and having her father, and later on we get to know a bit more of her backstory and the backstory of the family, somewhat of her father actually being the mayor of the city, of the town, and being already the candidate for re-election, so he's already in office. But from the get-go, we can see that he does not have the best relationship with Mitsuha. Add to that Mitsuha lives with her grandmother and her younger daughter Yotsuha, and basically the three of them, the grandma, the younger sister, and Mitsuha, need to basically upkeep both the shrine and the traditions of the Shinto cult that it has in the town. And this goes a long ways and becomes a major theme of the movie as time goes on, until the going from the second to the third arc is especially important to the rest of the movie. It becomes, I will not say like the central point, but it is the medium of which the story kind of goes forward, let's say. I really don't want to give spoilers towards the third act going forward, because there is a moment where the whole thing kind of splits when the second act ends, and I don't want to actually review that for those who have not watched it or read it, if you chose to go towards the manga. But then again, that is basically the setting that we find our first protagonist, Mitsuha, and from the get-go, from her first scene that we find her, we have some implications. We have something that will become more prevalent as the story goes on, and something that will be and is, for the most part, one of the key visual features of not only the movie itself, but all of the marketing around it. it is the comet. I think it's the Tiamat comet, which I have to enter a little tangent here, but I didn't know Tiamat comet existed. To be fair, I didn't actually go to actually check if it is a real thing, but calling it Tiamat, I don't know if it's something with the translation, but I mean, I play D&D, I know what Tiamat is, so kind of weird. I don't know if the name was let's say implied to actually like foreshadow something that would happen. I mean, I don't know. Anyways, so basically we have the whole situation with Mitsuha, and from the get-go, from the first scene that we have her, we have this implication of the comet, and then the fact that one day before we are actually watching, apparently she did a scene at the school that she does not remember. That is something that is later explained as we get to know our second protagonist. So going forward, when the next scene, more or less, let's just say the next scene, the next major point that the movie makes is that when Mitsuha sleeps, she changes body with a guy that lives in Tokyo, goes to high school, and lives 100% a different life from her. So she that is someone that lives in a rural area that has some kind of importance in her life because she's the daughter of the mayor, and someone that always dreamed of, and this is something that I didn't actually mention before, but something that she dreams of is to move out and actually go to Tokyo, to live in the city and to actually see the beauties of the urban area. Although I think at this point in time we may have some different opinions around this whole thing, but still she finds herself inside of someone else's body, and in trying to upkeep his way of living, she tries to actually conform to everything that he has to do. So from going to a high school to I think that something that goes for both tourists and someone from a rural area from Japan that didn't actually go to Tokyo, never went to Tokyo, deciphering the whole of the train system of Tokyo. I think it's maybe a challenge. I mean, I might find that out myself in a few months, but that's besides the point. So she has to basically keep the facade that she's him, while she doesn't actually understand the idea that she's actually inside someone else's body. She thinks that she's dreaming, and that goes towards the at this first moment, at the very least, the usual hijinks that you would expect of a body exchange, Freaky Friday kind of situation. And this brings me to the first point that I wanted to bring up. I am really biased when talking about this kind of thing because I'm the number one hater of Freaky Friday kind of movies, series, stuff, even episodes. If there is only like one of filler episode of exchanging bodies, I don't like it because for the most part it is really redundant. There's no real lesson to be learned at the end of the day, and generally most anime, most series, most cartoons and whatever, they do it for the sake of doing it because it's a trope that everybody kind of knows and understands the idea of, but never actually gets to the part where this becomes actually important for the series itself. That being said, this whole movie is built around the idea that both of these people, they change bodies regularly, not every day, but regularly they change bodies. We never actually see the actual frequency of it, but then we find out later on that they kind of begin to adapt, and this all happens within the first arc of this movie, where let's say it's the first like I don't know, half an hour or something like that. Maybe even earlier, 20 minutes, whatever. What is important here is that then we get to meet our second protagonist, the guy named Taki. He is a high schooler living in Tokyo. He lives only with his dad. We don't actually get much in the way of a background on Taki. We just get the general pointers on his life. So the fact that he goes to high school normally, but he has a part-time job on a Italian restaurant, and that he has a crush on one of his co-workers, one of his senpais, and her is, let's say, one of the points of contact with from both sides, because as Mitsuha gets Taki's body, let's say half of the time, if anything, the way that she acts way more feminine than Taki, because Taki is your stereotypical kind of high schooler, mostly veered towards what you would think of normal shonen protagonist, more or less. She kind of gets the attention of everybody around Taki in a different way. So as much as he makes a scene on her school, she makes a scene on his school, but in a different manner. And in that sense, everybody around them kind of gets affected, and this is a thing where I think they draw a bit of parallel with most other change places, change bodies kind of tropes go, where the surroundings are the surrounding people are generally the first ones to see the cracks in the facade and actually notice that there's something different. Towards Mitsuha's side, when Taki takes her body, it is either Mitsuha's younger sister or her friends at school. And for Taki, the most that we get to see at the very least is his friends and his senpai, that I frankly don't actually remember her name right now, because even though I just finished watching the movie, I just forgot it right away. I don't know. And basically the first act works like that. We have so much more of a close look on Mitsuha's side rather than Taki's side, because lo and behold, Mitsuha is the main actual protagonist of this. For the first part, at the very least, she gets the most of the background explanations for her, while Taki will have a more pronounced role to play towards the end of the movie, which again, I don't want to actually explain why. And as such, right, so as the movie progresses, we have a whole lot of montages. I think that the first two acts, they are really small in terms of length, but I think that they explain themselves really well in a way that it doesn't actually feel like too much of a rush to actually go towards the more important bits, because at the very least, I'm still talking about the first act, right? So the first act really gets the more kind of funny bits out before the actual drama starts, because after both of them get the idea that they're kind of changing bodies or exchanging bodies on a regular basis, they start to kind of keep track and keep let's say logs on themselves to keep to one another. So they kind of start this communication with one another without actually communicating with themselves directly, and this becomes kind of a really big part of the dynamic at the very beginning. I mean, you can already extrapolate that this will end up being a romantic relationship, even though let's say at the beginning it would not kind of veer towards that way, it would not lean towards that being the logical conclusion. Though if you know anything about this anime, about this movie, you know where this goes. So either or, it's going to end on a romance. That being said, going towards the second act, and the act that actually kind of lays the groundwork to the actual crux of the movie, we get to understand more or less that first both of them basically confirm somewhat that the one thing that is letting them or that at the very least the thing that is implied to be letting them actually get to change bodies is the comet, although later on the movie kind of changes a bit, but that's besides the point. And then we have also a bit more of a development in towards their personal lives as each of them starts to mess up with one another, not intentionally, but as things go. When Taki is on Mitsuha's body, she acts like a guy. She takes little leaps, even doesn't actually start a fight on the school, but nearly, or causes more scenes than needed. And while Mitsuha gets the favor of Taki senpai by helping her with using her, as she put it, her femininity. So there's that. And eventually landing Taki a date with his senpai that he always had a crush on. And from then on, right, we have the major split of the movie, and basically this is the last part of the story that I will actually comment on, is the part where the comet gets closest to Earth, and we have a split where Taki has a date with his senpai, and Mitsuha has the Autumn Matsuri or Aki Matsuri. So she has that to attend to. Something that I think I need to actually mention before anything, and this is part of the setup to the actual crux, because this kind of becomes important later. And this is something that it's kind of really strange coming from a culture that is not, let's say, doesn't have actual contact with Shinto culture, more or less, but there's this ritual at the first act that both Mitsuha and Yotsuha are part of, that they have, and I will not know the technical terms of everything here, but they first have a whole and again, this is pictured on a lot of animes. I don't actually know the name of the dance, but it is somewhat famous Shinto dance made by priestesses for the most part, with the kind of golden tiara and the how do you say that, the little bells on the staff. I don't actually know the name of anything. I'm not a Shinto expert, sorry, but basically they first dance and then they begin the process of making kuchi kamizake, which is basically it's sake made with chewed rice. The idea is that chewing rice first breaks off the grains and also adds the enzymes from saliva to actually start the fermentation process. I know that sounds unhygienic and stuff, and sure enough, it may be. There's an argument to say that the fact that it creates alcohol later on may or may not sterilize it. I'm not saying that you should drink it, that's not the fact, but it is kind of tradition on more Shinto-centered not only families but temples and stuff. So maybe not something that happens too much nowadays, but it is something that is cemented in tradition and stuff. With that said, it is part of the main plot later on that this special sake is part of the soul of Mitsuha, and later on it will become an important part to the main plot of the movie as it begins. And basically, just to finish off the part where I want to stop at the story, so Taki has his date with his senpai, though it becomes clear from the get-go that he is not really concentrating on anything else besides thinking about the fact that actually who got him the date was Mitsuha, and as such he wanted to thank her especially. And again, this later on becomes a romantic feeling. And on the counterpart, Mitsuha has her Akimatsuri, though she as well cannot stop thinking about the fact that she wants to meet Taki in person and actually talk to him and stuff. That all culminates with the passing of the comet near Earth and basically reaching the main part of most of the marketing where the comet split, and that's when the second act ends. And I will not talk about anything else because I feel like it would end up being unspoiled. So having said that, I will go to then my next point, where basically my opinion about the movie. So where do I start with this? To tell you the truth, I came fully blind with expectations on the floor. I remember having heard two sides of the argument. Having heard people say that this was the best movie that they ever watched, and at the same time having people say that this was overhyped and overall pretty mid. I want to say that I sit on the middle of this. It is not mid by any stretch, but I can understand that maybe the name of it has become way bigger than the fact that it actually is that great. So it kind of becomes a weird like Goldilocks situation for me at the very least, where yes, the movie is good, but I can understand some people say that it is overhyped because, again, as I said at the beginning, I don't feel like this innovates on anything. I don't think that there are no novel concepts overall in this. I just think that this is a really well done movie with a really well told story, and I think that this is kind of reflected a bit in the fact that this movie, I will not say it leans on the animation, but the animation work that they have, especially at the beginning and towards the, let's say, the middle to the end, more the middle really. The end is really, there's one specific scene which I personally liked a lot because of the style, but maybe not everyone will agree with me, but I feel like that they did a really nice job on everything. I feel like for one, at the very least, something that I noticed and I really thought like, holy shit, this is nice, was the one scene at the beginning where I think it's Yosoha who's making breakfast, and oh my god, man, that there's this thing where everybody says that Ghibli food looks really appetizing. Kimi no wa has them running for their money at the very least. I'm not saying it's really better, but it's up there, you know. And add to that the fact that this anime really does rely on a few characters. There are, if anything, like 10 or so characters, if even less maybe, and it is really well executed on all fronts. I think that there are no hiccups on anything that I could find. The art is pretty nice. The whole thing is really well done. The animation overall is pretty nice. The scenery, I think, is especially gorgeous. It's so nice. I really did think at some point that if that town really exists, maybe I should visit it just to see, you know, because it really does remind me of a more paradisaic kind of scenario. I think that the layout of the city that they present, I don't know if the city is real, okay, but looking at the city in at the town in the movie, it really does have that vibe of being a really small but cozy town to live with, the big lake in the middle and everything else like built around it, and the whole kind of idyllic thing of horror Japan on the mountains kind of thing. I don't know if everyone can relate to that as I do, because as I see it at the very least, it's most of this of the kind of architecture that comes from the fact that some parts of Japan are just whole as mountain. I really think that they adapted really well, and for the most part I think that the movie really depicts that really nicely. And for the most part I think that the movie just works. It just delivers on all fronts. I think that the music in general is pretty nice. I've not really felt like any of the songs really touched me as much as maybe other movies that I watched, but at the same time the soundscape is pretty nice. The way that they present the scenes with songs and stuff is pretty interesting. The whole work with bells, with the different sound effects that they use when Taki and Mitsuharu interacting with one another and stuff. So it is really interesting that way. And again, I think the art is really nice. I think, and this is a really small nitpick, it's me really like trying to find something to complain about, but I think that most of the close-ups in the movie, and this is throughout the movie from the first to the last act, I think the close-ups did not like land that well. They do not convey shock well enough. I think that this is due to the art style, but it is not a fault of the artist, it's just how things landed. But even then, I think that overall everything was for the most part perfect. There are no hiccups anywhere. Whole thing is just pristine that the way it is, and it is really interesting to actually watch how they just thought of everything. And this is the best accolade that I can give to this movie, is that this is the one movie that is about a theme that I don't like, that is the body change, Freaky Friday kind of shit. This is the one instance that I can say I actually liked the way that they used it, because they didn't use it as point in time kind of filler stuff, and they didn't use it to do like the general trope of, oh, I know the differences, the difficulties on your life and stuff. No, there is part of it, yes, but the way that they use it as a tool to actually show connections between people and to actually fulminate this idea of how people, not only how they who are changing bodies can create a connection, but how their connections to people around them can actually influence one another and actually influence how they perceive themselves. I think that there is a bigger message of coming of age and stuff, but at this point, and I don't want to sound like pedantic when I say this, even though kind of is, but I mean, I'm already past puberty. I don't have that teenage angst anymore. If anything, I just have my only anxiety in my life right now is if I can keep my day job to actually pay my bills, you know. So it's not that there's no extra message more important than what I'm laying out here, but at the same time, these are the things that I took from it. I think that each to their own. If you watch it, you probably have a different experience from mine, and everybody else will derive something different from it. I think that, let's say, reading comprehension in this case is a free form act. There is no like correct answer, give or take, because as this is a movie that does not explain itself that well, even towards the end, there is a lot of space to actual discussion, to actually like think about what are we actually talking about here, what is the objective of everything, and if there's an objective even. So I think in that sense we can derive different things from it, and that's basically the point I'm trying to make. Just to cement it again, animation and art, I think it was wonderful, the whole thing. There's one part where Taki begins to actually like draw with a pencil, and then you can see the little imperfections that the pencil leaves in the paper, and I just thought, oh my god, think of the guy that has to actually animate that. Like, oh my god, man, so incredible. But I think that I will leave it at that. Again, go watch the movie. Please go watch the movie. And one last thing before I finish, most people will not hear this, but and then I know that there is, I think it's a non-confirmed kind of deal, but it is kind of a known fact that this is part of a trilogy made by Comics Wave, that is, so begins with the Disaster trilogy, something like that begins with Kimi no Wa, then Weathering With You, and then Suzune. I don't know at this point if I will do the review for the other two, because I still have some things that I want to cover this year, just to not let like the whole thing kind of go. But even then, we'll see. I don't actually know at this point. Things may change. I don't know. With that being said, thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for watching. Please like, please share, please follow, depending on the platform you're in. It helps stick around for next time. Bye.